So, namaskar friends and welcome once again. In this particular lecture, we are going to talk about our Indian concept of Kāla. Kal, generally it is translated as time, but we need to ponder over it and find out whether the concept of time that we have is Kal or the Indian tradition looks at it differently. All of us need to know one thing, that the concepts of time differ from culture to culture. While in Western culture time is equated with money, because it is believed that the time that has spent has gone forever. But in Indian tradition we have always looked at time as a continuum, as something that is in circularity. So, we will have to look at it and how does it shape our understanding and use of time, that is also very important. So, from speed to timing, now we are living in a world that is defined by speed, and that is why this is very important whether speed is always good. Well, you might have come across this caution on the expressways and highways, speed thrills but kills. What does that really mean? I believe that is very relevant to this particular discussion that we are going to have. So, in modern soft skills discourse, we find that there is a framework that privileges speed, efficiency and measurable output. So, your efficiency is measured in terms of your output, how quickly you can give an output. Communication is valued when it is quick, decision making when it is decisive, and productivity when it is immediate. Now, this orientation emerges from a broader cultural logic in which time is treated as a resource to be managed, compressed and optimized. But we need to critique this, whether this is the right kind of approach and attitude. So, we find that it is assumed that faster action necessarily leads to better outcomes, ignoring the qualitative dimensions of experience such as depth, maturity and contextual awareness. Now, the question arises whether the decisions made in haste are the decisions that are the best. Well, Indian knowledge system offers a fundamentally different orientation. So, instead of treating time as an external neutral metric, they approach it as a lived and ethical dimension of existence, which we call Kāla. And that is why I said whether the Kal can be translated as time in the modern sense, and the answer is no, it is much more than that, it has a different connotation. So, action in this framework is not evaluated merely by its speed or efficiency, but by its appropriateness within a given temporal context. So, how do we evaluate the effectiveness, efficacy or appropriateness of an action? It is looked at from its suitability or appropriateness in a given context. So, this is where the virtue of Kṣamā, Kṣamā that is patience or forbearance, it becomes significant, not as passive waiting, but as the capacity to withhold premature action until clarity emerges. So, Indian knowledge system always suggests that rather than preferring speed, you prefer accuracy and always take calculated step when you take action or make reactions. So, the emphasis therefore shifts from speed to rhythm, from urgency to timing and from immediate results to endurance across time. Well friends, one of the examples can be our thoughtless development in the modern sense, where we are immediately governed by the needs of the time rather than thinking of the future. and sustainability. Well, Indian knowledge system would prefer sustainability to this kind of short sightedness, and that is why it always looks at the quality of a work rather than the speed of it. Just as in nature or classical music, where harmony depends not on rapid movement, but on measured progression. Human action too must align with the right moment. So, there is always a right mature moment for something to be done, and if we do it in haste, obviously that will have its consequences. So, the modern obsession with speed reflects a deeper anxiety about uncertainty and control. Now, friends, you might have realized whenever you are very nervous and you are asked to make a presentation, you rush through your slides or your ideas fearing that they may be lost. Fine. And this happens because you are anxious about yourself. You are not very much in control of your thought process, but somebody who has control over his thought and emotions and is a seasoned speaker will always deliver it with pause, grace and equanimity. So, by accelerating action, one attempts to dominate time. So, our very effort to dominate nature, to tame it, is resulting in all modern day disasters, because we are performing accelerated action in a bid to control that, and as a result it is resulting in some consequences. So, Indian traditions by contrast cultivate the ability to work with time rather than against it. It always says that there is a proper time to do something. That does not mean that one should keep delaying or procrastinating an action till infinity. No, that also does not mean that one should be a perfectionist, but that certainly calls for a proper judgment and proper timing while performing an action. So, recognizing that not all processes can be rushed without distortion. So, there are certain things that can be accomplished in quick time, but then there are certain things that are accomplished through certain processes, and that is why, friends, this particular couplet is very important. कारज धीरे होत है काहे होत अधीर समय पाए तरुवर फलय केतक सींचो नीर. That means patience is the key, going with nature is the key, work is accomplished gradually. Gradually means there are processes that have a time frame. So, work is accomplished gradually. Why become impatient? A tree bears fruit only in its proper time, no matter how much you water it. When a child is born, the child requires certain number of years in order to grow and in order to mature. So, giving it some kind of hormonal sorts might result in some kind of aberration. The body size will grow up, but then the mind size will remain that of a child. And that is why, friends, in our traditional wisdom it is always said that a proper procedure or process has to be followed rather than hurrying it up and sometimes ignoring those processes that need to be followed, because they mostly result in wrong action or action that is thoughtless and that might result in some kind of disaster and might cost heavily. Let us take an example from Ramayana, where Dasharatha, the father of Ram, he charges his arrow without knowing who has he targeted, and that proves very costly. So, it is a compelling illustration of the dangers of speed without timing up when we look at this episode. Renowned for his exceptional skill in Sabdabhedi Vana, Sabdabhedi Vana, that is the arrows that can be directed at will, and Dasharatha was known for that. He used to order his arrows to charge in a particular direction and hit a particular target, and they used to do that. So, he was renowned for his exceptional archery skill, especially skill in Sabdabhedi Vana. During a hunting expedition, he heard what he assumed to be an animal drinking water, and immediately he released his arrow, relying on his expertise. But then what it turned out to be was a painful realization that rather than hitting an animal, it hit someone who was a young ascetic, Shravan Kumara. All of us know about that story. Whenever we talk about the most devoted son, it is Shravan Kumar who is referred to. He was carrying both his blind old parents on his shoulders and was taking them for pilgrimage, and when he just stopped near that river to fetch water for them, at that point in time Dasharatha hit him. So, we find that the target is not an animal, but a young ascetic Shravan Kumar, who is mortally wounded. The realization comes too late. Dasharatha's action, though skillfully executed, is revealed to be premature and misaligned with reality. So, this episode is philosophically significant because it exposes a critical flaw in the equation of skill with correctness. So, if you are skillful, that does not mean you will always take correct course of action. Dasharatha certainly does not lack in competence, but what he lacks is pause, verification and contextual awareness. He does not bother to think before he acts, find out whether that particular target that he is trying to hit is a human or an animal, and that is the reason his thoughtless action results in this kind of a tragedy, and this tragedy has its consequences. Aham hi sabdaveditvad banam mumocha durmati, and then later on he repents, in my folly, relying on my sound, only on sound, I release the arrow. So, he made this mistake. Here folly or durmati, where mind is not in its right frame. Here folly is not ignorance, but misjudgment born out of overconfidence. So, friends, many people might be committing this error of misjudgment because of their overconfidence. They would not realize that they have to think before they act. The king trusts his ability so completely that he bypasses the need for further awareness. This mirrors a distinctly modern condition, where individuals often act on incomplete information, over reliance on expertise or systems, pressure to respond quickly, and this results in disaster of some kind or failure of some kind. So, the consequences of this impulsive act extend far beyond the moment. Shravan Kumara's grieving parents curse Dasharatha, foretelling that he too will die in anguish due to separation from his son, and this curse later manifests in king's death during Rama's exile. So, Dasharatha, because of that mindless act, suffers the same fate as the parents of Shravan face at that point in time. Their curse befalls on him, and so he dies bewailing for his son, Rama. So, an action performed in haste can generate consequences that unfold across time. A single moment of impatience can disrupt an entire temporal trajectory. Many a time, friends, we find that we do things on impulse, lot of bizarre events take place. In moments fury, people shoot each other. In moments fury, people decide to separate in relationships. In moments fury, they commit suicide or take the ultimate step. Now, all these things certainly call for a re-evaluation of how we treat time. So, if we can learn from this story of Dasaratha, we can always find out the story of Dasaratha, which becomes a powerful critic of both ancient and modern tendencies to equate speed with intelligence, decisiveness with correctness. So, what he did in his time and what we are doing in our time, they both are wrong, because he also relied on his speed and he thought that his speed shows his intelligence and his ability to charge his arrows in no time, and we are also doing the same thing. In a bid to find speed in our execution, sometimes we compromise on the processes. So, how do we understand this concept of Kāla, time beyond clock? It certainly does not equate to our understanding of time in the modern sense. The concept of Kāla, although we do not have any exact translation in English, so we call it time only. So, the concept of Kāla in Indian thought resists the modern tendency to reduce time to clock measurement, scheduling and quantification. So, this produces the familiar language of managing time, saving time or wasting time. These are the phrases that we always make use of with reference to time. All of which assume that time is an external resource under human control. We believe that time is under our control, but the fact is time is under nobody's control. Indian knowledge system complicates this assumption. Kāla is not merely chronological, but existential and qualitative. It is lived, meaning it is experienced differently depending on one's mental, emotional and situational state. So, always people talk about good time, bad time, lucky time, unlucky time. So, it is ethical because the value of an action depends not only on what is done, but when it is done. So, time is not measured only in terms of the material outcome, it is also measured in terms of our intentions and to what extent that action of ours has a bearing on others, and it is contextual, because no action can be meaningfully evaluated outside the temporal conditions in which it arises. So, Kālo asmi lokachakrit praviddha, that means I am time, the great destroyer of worlds. What does the time say? Time is a force that shapes, transforms and ultimately dissolves all action and existence. Wrongly, we believe that time is under our control and we dictate time, but the fact is time itself dictates all of us. Time is both creative and destructive. It allows things to emerge, mature and eventually decline. So, if you look at how this earth of ours has come into existence, all of us know it has taken millions of years to take it shape, and then its decline is also dictated by time itself. So, if time itself is dynamic and powerful, then action cannot be evaluated purely in terms of intention or execution. For example, speaking truth too early may create resistance, making a decision too late may render it irrelevant, acting without readiness may produce unintended harm. We realize it on a daily basis in our life. Fine. So, even if you are speaking the truth, you need to look for the best psychological moment to plan it. Even if you have to make a decision, if you keep on delaying it, a delayed decision is no decision, and that is why there is always a proper time. So, there is a layer that is introduced by Kāla, and that layer is called situational intelligence. Now, this situational intelligence, what is this? This is our situational awareness, how keenly we can perceive a situation and can take appropriate action. So, it demands not just what to do, but when to do it. So, knowing just what to do is not enough, but this is also important at what time or what moment that has to be done. So, modern soft skills training rarely emphasizes on timing as a core competency. So, friends, through this discussion I would like to emphasize on timing as a core competency. Time your action, do not be in a hurry, okay? Because if you take an appropriate action at an appropriate opportune time, that will have maximum impact. So, this creates individuals who may be articulate but poorly timed. In our world, we are creating such people, they are very articulate, but then they do not know what to speak and when to speak and where to speak. They are decisive, but their decisions are premature. They are efficient, but contextually unaware. Fine. In other words, they possess skill, but lack temporal wisdom. So, friends, the temporal wisdom, the contextual awareness, the practical wisdom, they play a very important role, and they help us in thinking before acting. They help us in identifying the right moment for an action to be taken. Now, again, Kṣamā, what is this Kṣamā? This is our strength or our weakness? Well, friends, let me tell you one thing. The people who have forbearance, they are the people who can conquer the world. This is not your weakness, this is your biggest strength. In the wake of turbulent times, the only thing that can help you stand testimony to that time is your forbearance. Kṣamā bīrasya bhūṣanam, that is what is said. Forbearance is the ornament of the strong. It is not a weakness on your part. In contemporary discourse, patience is often misunderstood as passivity, delay, or even weakness, a lack of initiative or inability to act decisively. Within fast paced professional environments, those who pause are frequently seen as less competent than those who respond immediately. You might have seen people scaling heights in no time. Is that a virtue or a vice? We leave it on the time. But there are people who take every step and build on their skill and strength and then scale heights. If you look at the people who have made their names and the names that have sustained for years, they are not the people who have made meteoric rise. They are the people who have worked meticulously, followed each and every step, and then they have reached there and then they have sustained there. So, Kṣamā is not passive waiting, nor is it helpless delay. It is an active inner discipline, a cultivated capacity to withhold impulsive reaction. It allows you not to be impulsive, but thoughtful. Even when provoked, pressured, or emotionally disturbed, it helps you to stand testimony to such temptations, keep a poised self, and then give a measured response. So, it requires a strength not weakness. Somebody who can take criticism in the right spirit, somebody who can control his or her impulses, somebody who even in the wake of disruptive emotions maintains calm and composure. They are strong people, they are not weak people. So, Kṣamā operates at multiple levels. It accounts for emotional endurance, ethical steadiness and resistance to impulse. So, somebody who cultivates this in his character and behavior, this patience certainly will make his character strong. Patience is not the absence of action, however, as many people might think. Rather, it is the intelligent regulation of action. You take action, but you refrain from taking impulsive action. Your action is well thought out, well timed. So, the teaching focus on action, not on the fruits of action, from the Bhagavad Gītā is one of the most cited and in many ways most misunderstood ideas in Indian philosophy. Karmanne vadhikaraste ma phalesu kadachana. Lot of people will say, why should I perform an action if there is no fruit of this action? Probably they do not understand the actual intent of this idea. This teaching does not deny the importance of results. Rather, it distinguishes between what lies within one's control. Now, what is in your control? Do you control the results? No, you control the action. You are responsible for your action. So, within one's control, action, intention, effort, and then what lies beyond control are the outcomes, consequences and reception. So, what this particular dictum means is that you concentrate on whatever is under your control and leave whatever is beyond your control to God and to your karma. So, anxiety arises when the mind becomes prematurely attached to outcomes that are inherently uncertain. We do not concentrate on our action and we start thinking about the outcome. Now, action is very much within our control, but the result is not in our control. So, the future is imagined, anticipated and mentally occupied before it arrives. As a result, action becomes burdened with expectation, performance becomes strained, failure becomes psychologically devastating. So, thinking about the outcome before you really perform an action puts undue pressure on your action and your action is also affected badly by that, and that is why it is said that you concentrate on your action and leave the results to fate and to karma, and obviously if your action is in the right direction the results will certainly come. Thus, anxiety is not produced by action itself, but by the projection of results into the present moment. Now, detachment, what is that? Anasakti. This is another concept which is frequently misunderstood. In Indian philosophy, this is one of the ideas. Detachment, it is one of the most frequently misunderstood ideas in Indian philosophy. In modern usage, it is often interpreted as emotional distance, lack of involvement or even apathy. But this misunderstanding arises because detachment is mistakenly equated with not caring. However, in the Bhagavad Gītā, detachment does not mean withdrawal from action. It means freedom from psychological dependence on outcomes. Now, this is yet another way of putting it: concentrate on your action, perform your action free from its result. So, detachment in this sense allows for full and even intense involvement in action. One remains committed, attentive and responsible, but does not allow one's identity, self-worth or emotional stability to become entirely dependent on success or failure. So, it is a state of inner independence within outer engagement. Indifference by contrast is marked by a lack of concern, minimal effort or emotional disengagement. So, friends, anasakti or detachment is not indifference. So, detachment refines our action, whereas indifference weakens it. Fine. So, we need to understand that. A key tension in contemporary life is between process orientation and performance orientation. The modern systems, especially in education and corporate environments, are largely structured around performance, visible results, measurable outcomes, comparison with others. We always try to gauge our success in terms of these measurable outcomes. In such a culture, success is defined by external markers, grades, rankings, promotions, recognition. This creates a constant pressure to perform, display and achieve quickly. Even as parents, we look at the scorecard of our children and decide whether our child is doing fine, to the complete denial of the real qualities that our child possesses. So, in contrast to this performance orientation, a process oriented approach emphasizes depth of engagement, continuous learning, gradual improvement, sustainability over time. How nice if the parents, rather than ruining the fact that their child could not score a perfect 100, could ended up getting 79, take pride in the fact that in the last exam their child scored 69 and that way has improved by 10%. So, performance driven culture, while efficient in producing results, often leads to stress, competition, short term thinking, where immediate results are prioritized over long term growth. So, how much can you perform in no time, but then it has its consequences. All of us know that. As I said, development without sustainability, without foresight, certainly will lead to disastrous consequences. Indian thought subtly shifts emphasis from quality of action, emphasizes towards quality of action rather than display of results. So, if we look at Indian thought, in Indian thought we do not look at the quantum of work, we look at the quality of work. So, quality of action is more important than display of results. So, this aligns more closely with a process oriented view, where excellence is not a single achievement, but a state cultivated over time. Acceptance. What is acceptance? It involves a clear recognition of what lies beyond one's control, combined with a continued commitment in act where agency still exists. It is an active stance. One does not deny reality, but engages with it intelligently. Acceptance requires clarity about limits, emotional steadiness, willingness to continue effort within those limits. Well, friends, there are numerous examples to suggest wherever the humans have tried to become superhumans, they have turned into accepting subhuman status. So, identifying our limits and acting accordingly. Having said that, I am not putting any limit on our imagination, on our effort, but certainly this should not be something that is not possible, and that is why we continue to work harder and harder, but at the same time we accept whatever results are coming our way. Resignation by contrast is marked by withdrawal. It is not clarity, but defeat disguised as understanding. Many a time it so happens, friends, we are working very hard and we are not getting desired results. Now, the easiest thing for us may be to resign, to leave it and walk away, disengage ourselves. But no, that is not the right path. The right path is acceptance that yes, I am not getting the desired result, so what, let me continue work, someday I will get the desired result. So, Shukh dukhe same kritva labha labhau jaya jayau, treating pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat alike engage in action. That is what Lord Krishna says. You should not get too involved in pleasure or pain, gain or loss, victory or defeat, but rather concentrate on your action, continue your commitment, because over a sustained period of time this will certainly give you result. You might have come across the contemporary ad regarding SIP. They always say that ये टिके रहने का गेम है. So, there are ups and downs, but those who will sustain for longer are likely to harness its benefits. The emphasis is not on withdrawing from action, but on remaining steady while acting within an uncertain and uncontrollable world. So, friends, nowadays we find that the whole world is going through a phase of uncertainty or precarity. Now, if you can maintain your poise and continue working, probably you will come out of it, but if you resign to it, you will collapse forever. So, acceptance here means acknowledging outcomes without emotional collapse, continuing action without paralysis. So, friends, let me again remind you that the Indian philosophy provides us a very robust framework for performing action without giving much importance to the outcomes. But do not take me wrong, we all want result for our action. What I am suggesting is not the lack of result, but our overindulgence in that result. If our process is right, probably the performance will also be right. So, concentrate on the processes and results will certainly come your way. So, thank you very much for your kind attention. Do join me for the next class. Thank you very much.